So any idea what that was, Anne?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Right, so it's 5 o'clock and I declare the meeting of the City Council open. So this meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act and the Remote Meetings Protocol agreed by Cabinet, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you're not speaking to ensure there's no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council's standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me when you wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. So for the benefit of everyone watching on the live stream, when I invite members to cast their votes on any particular item, they will do so electronically using the voting facility in the chat function. The votes will be automatically counted and are recorded on the system, but individual votes are not identified on the screen, and the chat room poll is not available on the live stream for public viewing. However, I will announce the number of votes cast for or against and any abstentions before I declare the result. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the Council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. So I've received apologies for absence from the following councillors: Deb Davis, Tom Suller, Mark Whitcott and Richard White. Are there any other apologies that need to be recorded?
Councillor Ibrahim Hayat and Councillor Tracy Holyoke, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Harvey. So are there any declarations of interest at this stage? So obviously, if any declarations of interest arise during this meeting, perhaps you'll draw attention to it using the raised hand facility or by posting a message in the chat box. So the first thing is mayoral announcements. So Matthew, I think you'd like to welcome our new councillor and my colleague John Jones to the council, please. And Jane, the second, yeah. Councillor Mudd, the second, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to formally introduce the new Conservative councillor for the Hwrc Award, albeit virtually, Councillor John Jones. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join your fantastic team and council. I would just like to say it was a hard-fought battle and luckily I won. I just think going forward, I just look to help the people in the Hwrc Award and the people of Newport. So my services is available to everybody. You can have a chat and see which is the best way to go forward. I would just like to say as well, welcome. Thank you everybody for a nice warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on behalf of the administration, I'd like to welcome Councillor Jones to Newport City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have the minutes in front of us. So they are before us. Are there any points of accuracy, please?
Mr. Mayor, could I jump in at that stage with the Hwrc Award?
Oh yeah, I'm very sorry. I did miss that. I had written it down. Yes. Sorry, Councillor Jevons. Would you like to announce? Would you like to announce the award, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are in receipt, although members won't be able to see this very well because of my background, and I will present it to the Mayor when possible at the full council. But Newport City Council were winners of the Civic Amenity Site of the Year in 2021, which I'm very proud and pass on all my thanks to the staff. And as I say, I will present this in full council when able to do so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd also like to say that at this point that our experience of the Civic Amenity Site is extremely positive. The staff that you've got there are really, really helpful, and I think they're a credit to both our city and the council. Thank you. Right. So now the minutes from the 20th of July are before us. Are there any points of accuracy? Okay, no.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Councillor Routley.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, on page 16, Mr. Mayor, please note that I tried on page 16. It's the response from, it was the Councillor Matthew Evans, and it's the response. I tried to raise a point of accuracy regarding the response from Cabinet Member Harvey. I was overruled. And if I could have that noted, please.
Thank you. I'm sure that will be noted in the minutes, Councillor Routley. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
so is there a seconder now for the minutes, please? I've already moved them, obviously.
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mudd. So would all of those in favour now please indicate by clicking on the voting application in the chat box, and I will give all members a short time to cast their votes. Okay. I don't seem to have a chat box yet. Thank you. Okay, I think that's carried. We've got 100% response to that. Okay, next we move on to appointments with Councillor Harvey to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I would like to move the list of appointments in the report with the addition of Claire Heath, Governor for St Gabriel's Primary School, and Tim Harvey, who is replacing Paul Baxter as Governor for Lamwyn High. The Council's Appointments Subcommittee have also appointed Sally Ann Jenkins as the new Director for Social Services and Rhys Cornwall as the new Director for Transformation and Corporate Centre. And I'm sure everyone will agree that we are very pleased for them, and congratulations both Sally and Rhys. I now have to declare an interest and hand over to the leader. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'd like to nominate Rob Green, our Assistant Head of Finance, to the Board of Directors of Newport Transport, please.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder to that, and a seconder to the original appointments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll happily second that.
Both of them, Councillor Fairweather?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So back to Councillor Harvey. So nothing more, no more appointments, Councillor Harvey?
No, that's me for this week, this month rather, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Are there any requests for dispensation?
No, none, thank you.
If you take the vote on the appointments first, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Price. Could we take a vote, please, on the appointments? Your chat box will appear soon. Okay, we've got 100% response on that. Thank you all very much. So to the question I just asked, Councillor Harvey, are there any requests for dispensation?
No, there's no request for dispensation at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now next we move on to police issues. So I'm pleased to welcome Superintendent Mike Richards to the meeting. So may I remind members that if they wish to put any questions to Superintendent Richards after his presentation, then please use the raised hand facility in the chat box, and I will invite you to speak in the order indicated. Okay, so yes, that's okay. So Superintendent Richards, I think it's your go now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, good evening, everybody. It's been a couple of months since I've last been with you. I last attended this forum on the 29th of June, and I know that you've had a meeting in July that I couldn't get to. I just wanted to cover off three key things with you before I pause and take questions. The first thing I'd like to update you on is some issues around demand. an increase in demand that police and other services are currently experiencing. The second thing I'd like to share with you are some performance headline figures. And then the third thing, which I'll finish on, are some updates that have been provided by the inspectors of our 3 policing sectors across the city centre, and then I'll take questions. In terms of the demand that we're facing as a service, and I touched upon this in the meeting on the 29th of June, we are seeing a significant increase on our service, very similar to what our colleagues in health and Welsh Ambulance are experiencing. And to provide you some context of what that increase in demand looks like, in the first quarter of this financial year, so April, May and June, we saw a 33% increase in the volume of 999 calls that we have on Q4, so the first 3 months of 2021. That's over 5,000 more 999 calls that are received into our control rooms. As I say, that demand is similar to what is being seen in health and across other emergency services. I'm pleased to report to you that as a region across Gwent, we have implemented some governance around that demand to see us through what might be a tricky and bumpy few months. So I can tell you that a strategic coordinating group has been established. That is chaired by Tom Harding, who is the policing commander of this area, and consists of very senior chief officers from across local authority, health and our emergency services, and a tactical coordinating group that delivers some of the problem solving that we require is also being established. So we are well aware of the increase in demand, and we have got governance in place to see us through what will be a busy few months, particularly with Halloween, bonfire and Christmas just around the corner. What I am pleased to also report is the new recruits that we have coming through almost on a monthly basis within Gwent Police mean that you will see more police officers. They will be new, they will be inexperienced, but I know that you will join me in welcoming those to Newport. So a busy few months ahead. I'm confident that we've got plans in place to see us through the next few months, and certainly we're seeing an increase in our resource establishment. The second thing that I wanted to highlight to you are some performance headline figures. These figures are for the financial year to date, and these figures that I'm going to give you compare the same period the year before last. And I deliberately make that comparison with 2019 and 2020 because we know throughout COVID, all police forces saw a reduction in demand and a reduction in crime. So I want to try and compare pre-COVID levels to what we're experiencing now. And I am pleased to report that during the last, it's April to now, we have seen 11% decrease in crime based on the same figures and the same reporting period in 2019 and 2020. That's over 1,000 less crimes. The position is very similar for residential burglary. We've seen a 10% reduction in residential burglary between April and now and the same period in 2019-2020. A 16% reduction in violent offences and a 10% reduction in robbery. I have no doubt that you as elected members will challenge me around the confidence of people and maybe people not reporting matters, but I will need some convincing that that is the case. I've not seen anything that people are not reporting residential burglary or robbery or violent offences. So some positive headlines there. I just wanted to touch upon one thing that I'm often asked in this meeting around the average pickup time for our 101 service. Because of that increase in demand, we have seen an increase in the waiting time for our 101 service. And the most recent data that I can share with you is that on average, people are waiting 4 minutes compared to 2.5 minutes in Q4 last year. So January to March, 2.5 minutes. In Q1 of this year, April to June, that's increased to about 4 minutes. So that is consistent with the level of demand that we're facing. I just wanted to finish off with updating you on some matters across our 3 policing sectors. I've spoken to 3 of our inspectors this morning about the demand, the issues that are in each of our sectors. First of all, Newport City Centre, Inspector Jodie Davis is reporting 3 key issues that she's aware of: antisocial behaviour in the Kingsway, Friars Walk and the bus station area. She has updated me that there are 16 individuals who are subject of criminal behaviour orders, and those orders prohibit the offenders from doing anything that is described in that order, which I think is positive. She's told me that there is feeling and anxiety around aggressive begging within the city centre, and I know that she's working very closely with the Newport City Council around the PSBO. And she's updated me that there's been a slight increase in the volume of vehicles that have been broken into at our car parks across the city, and she's given me some reassurance of her plans to deal with that issue and the others. I'm also reassured that Jodie has a monthly forum with the elected members, the councillors in her ward. She tells me that takes place on the last Thursday of every month. So I'm really pleased to know that there's a forum where you as elected members can give feedback and hear the updates of the city centre. Moving over to Newport East, Inspector Martin Corley has given me a very comprehensive written update. I do not propose to read it out, but I'm well aware of a busy period in Allway. I'm well aware of a very busy weekend just gone where stones have been thrown at vehicles. Stones were thrown at police cars. One of those windows was damaged, injuring a police officer. And I would like to thank Councillor Harvey, Councillor Guy, Councillor Truman for making me aware of those issues over the weekend. I can assure you that there are plans in place. The behaviour is unacceptable, and we will be using all powers available to us to deal with those offenders. So that would include dispersal notices, it would include legislation where we may be looking at invoking legislation against the parents of those youths that are responsible for that damage. Inspector Corley also makes me aware of some antisocial behaviour at Liswary Pond and informs me that arrests have been made, and has also updated me that there's a plan for a walk around that area with at least one of the councillors for Allway. He's also made me aware of issues in Caerleon of HGV traffic linked to the Redrow estate. I know that he's working very closely with Redrow to look at alternative routes for those large vehicles. He's made me aware of some antisocial behaviour associated with the Bull public house, and he's working closely, I know, with licensing officers from the council and our own team to alleviate those issues. Moving up to Liswary, we're well aware of the car cruising issues in Tesco's in Spitty. I'm informed that there's been a significant reduction in those gatherings on a Sunday evening. They are now small gatherings, and again, patrol plans are in place for that issue. Just a couple more things to finish off on Newport East. I've been made aware of antisocial behaviour in Bryn Derwin over in the Victoria ward. It's drug dealing there, and I think that's been raised with me at previous full councils. Martin Corley has also made me aware of a success story, actually, a house closure in Morris Street, where there was some antisocial behaviour and drug dealing. And then he's asked me to pass on his thanks to the councillors who cover Beechwood Park for raising issues of antisocial behaviour there, and I'm informed that that situation has improved. So that is the update from Inspector Corley in Newport East. I'll finish off very quickly in Newport West. I've discussed issues with Inspector Stefan Williams. He's informed me of the launch of the PSBO in Pill on the 17th of September and tells me that there's progress being made in terms of warnings and tickets being issued. I am well aware again of car cruising issues in Celtic Way, Coed and Marshfield, and yesterday I spoke to the chair of Marshfield Community Council and arranged a meeting on the second Tuesday of October to discuss that. One final issue from Newport West, and it was raised with me by Councillor Jordan last week. We're well aware of the issue of off-road bikes in the Betters estate, and I've been informed by the neighbourhood policing team that is on their radar. There are dedicated patrols in place which will continue during our busy months of October and November. Mr. Mayor, I'll pause there. That is my update, and I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you. Just before I bring the leader in, I'd like for you to pass on my thanks to your officers. The first lot of which were involved in a site-sponsored bicycle ride from Newport to Brecon, starting off at the Central Police Station on behalf of the Teenage Cancer Trust. I think it's a very worthwhile cause. I think I could say that some of your officers exhibited varying degrees of fitness, so I was very pleased to see they were actually having to go at it. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that last night the Mayoress and myself attended Shaftesbury Youth Club to present awards to the youth group, and I know the police Deputy Chief Constable Ian Roberts was there as well, and some of your officers have been very close to that project, some of your PCSOs. So I'd like perhaps if you could pass on our thanks to them for the great work they're doing. Thank you. So now then, Leader, I think you wish to say a few words before we open the questions to other councillors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mike. It's good to see you here once again. I'd like to give you some feedback actually on the really positive community policing activities that are going on across the city. I was delighted to attend the Newport Yemeni Community Association Fun Day, which was held in Pill, and also to attend the Main Festival over in Jubilee Park. And what was so absolutely delightful about both of these events was not just to see a presence there from Gwent Police, actually, and there was also a presence from the Police and Crime Commissioner's office as well, but to see the way that representatives, whatever grade, we're all engaging with the community and engaging with the young people, talking to the adults, and actually getting stuck into some of the activities as well. And I think that's a really positive reflection of the work that Gwent Police do within our community. So I'd really like to give you that feedback and say well done to everybody who was involved in that. I do have two issues to raise, though, and they are quite important. The first is in relation to a number of arson attempts that we've experienced in the Marlborough ward in recent weeks. I'm particularly concerned about this because there's been a number of arson attempts in the field by St David's Hospice, and I'm sure that everybody on the City Council would share my despair at the thought of people who are experiencing end-of-life care, not just having to witness this, but also this putting a further risk to their safety. So what I'd really like to ask in relation to that is what ongoing work is there between Gwent Police and the South Wales Fire and Safety to actually investigate this. And following on from that, you mentioned in relation to the Bettis ward, the issue with off-road bikes. I'd like to ask what work is going on between Gwent Police and Newport City Homes as the landlord of many of the properties in the communities where we experience these problems in both Malpas and Bettis, to try and address this. I recognise Gwent Police are not the only agency that can present the solutions to both of these challenges, but I am seeking an assurance that there is ongoing work between partner organisations aimed at investigating and addressing some of these problems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Would you like to answer that, Superintendent Richards?
Yes, please. Thank you, Leader. First of all, thanks for your kind comments, and likewise, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your kind comments in your opening. In relation to the arson at St David's Hospice, I haven't received a briefing on that, I'm sorry, so I don't know the details of that specific matter, but I will get an update from the local team to understand when it occurred and where we are in terms of the investigation. In terms of the wider partnership work, I can reassure you that we work very closely with the fire service. They have a dedicated fire crime officer, and I can assure you that the governance of our tasking is in partnership with not just the fire service, but our registered social landlords as well. So each of our policing inspectors across the 3 sectors across Newport will have weekly partnership tasking meetings. In those meetings, there'll be representatives from the local authority, fire service, and not just Newport City Homes, but the other landlords as well. So it is a joined up approach. I will get you an update on the fire. I'm not aware of that, but I can reassure you that the issue around off-road bikes and the offenders is being very closely looked at in a partnership approach with all of our partners.
Thank you, Superintendent Richards. Right, so now we have questions from members. I don't have the chat box function on my screen at the moment, so if we could either find that or
so Councillor Marshall was the first to indicate, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marshall.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, Superintendent, many thanks obviously on the report there, and also we're saying about the bike rides. You kind of caught me off surprise when you were passing me on Cardiff Road when I was in my own world, but that's another point. But the issues which to raise, the first one is basically around the speed races. So there may be a decrease in them in Spitty. However, residents are complaining about the fact that they are meeting in the Tesco and Cardiff Road, and basically there's a lot of noise pollution at the back of the SDR road, so it sounds like they're moving on, and it's causing a bit of, obviously, when people are trying to sleep and kids and things like that there, all you can hear is the engines going back and forth at the back of the estate there. So it's just to make you aware of that, and also the concerns again at Mays Glass shops, that there seems to be an increase of activity, obviously with young people, drugs and things like that crossing over as well. Just a last point, I did read on Twitter with the Gwent police officers. I do try and follow obviously your Twitter page and profile. I was a bit surprised not to be made aware of the rogue traders. It was publicised on Twitter first, so just kindly ask, if you are obviously publicising that there is an issue, can you let the ward members know as well, because obviously we can make more people aware and we can share out the news rather than finding out in the public media, which obviously puts us on the behind step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall.
I think many of those points are from my awareness, and I am aware of the car cruising issues beyond the Spitty Tesco's. I must admit I wasn't aware that they were taking place at the Cardiff Road branch, but that is something that I will discuss with the local team. The Mays Glass shops is an issue that we often discuss here, and I can assure you that that is very much one of the priorities for the Newport West Inspector. And I must say I haven't seen the rogue traders tweets, but I will make sure that you as elected members do get that information first because of the reach that you have. So thank you, Councillor Marshall. I've made a note of all those points and I'll take those back.
Thank you. Mr. Price, the next person, please.
Yeah, Councillor Rahman, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Superintendent Richards, I wanted to thank you for the report that you gave earlier, and the leader mentioned Mayndy Festival that was held at Jubilee Gardens recently, and I want to pass on my thanks as well for officers attending. I can confirm that I'm having regular monthly meetings along with other Newport East councillors with Inspector Corley, which have been very fruitful and hopefully keeps going. But just want to raise a couple of points with you, Inspector. I just want to discuss Gwent Police's policy on low-level drug dealing. I'm concerned that some of the residents have contacted me about reporting where they've seen instances of drug dealing, low-level drug dealing on their streets, that it's been palmed off by some officers or operators on 101 as treating as low-level and non-urgent, or essentially not worth the time to investigate further. Now, this caused issue on one particular street in my ward of Victoria, which thankfully has been resolved with the help of Inspector Corley and his officers. But I'm just concerned that I've got other residents reporting these instances. I'm going to Inspector Corley, but I'm just worried if there's a change of policy of not treating the seriousness of these drug dealings at street level, whether anything is going to get done and just focusing on the high level sort of thing. So I was just wondering if you can clarify that for me, if there has been a shift or not. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rahman. Certainly no shift, no change in policy, no change in direction from me. Zero tolerance in terms of any level of drug dealing. Surprised and sorry to hear that you may have been given that response from our control room staff. It's something I'll go back and feed back to the head of our control room. But no, it's you know, I would expect when people call us and call 101 or 999 to report drug dealing that we respond appropriately, and that is my expectations. That is, you know, I'm pretty consistent with my team in terms of what I expect. So I can assure you there's been no direction from me that, you know, we shouldn't be responding to those lower level matters around antisocial behaviour and drug dealing. And I will take that feedback and I will make sure it's shared across the organisation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rahman. Mr. Price, the next one, please.
Councillor Spencer, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I apologise about my attire. I'm at my caravan in Simmons Yap and it's absolutely freezing up here, and the heating doesn't go on till October, so at least October anyway. Chief Superintendent, I attended a meeting last week with the Police and Crime Commission, which you made a presentation on stop and search. It was a great presentation. I'd just like to take this opportunity for you to come and speak to or virtually speak to Newport councillors about this presentation, and I should be in touch through my procurement team, some advice off them in the near future, if you could make that to Newport City Council, please.
Yes, certainly, Councillor Spencer. For those of you that weren't at the Police and Crime panel meeting, I did a presentation on stop and search and policing protest, which clearly was well received. And I'd be more than happy to come and talk to you all about those very important and contentious powers that we have. So I'd be delighted to, Councillor Spencer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. I'm sure members will congratulate you on your efforts almost single-handedly to combat climate change. Thank you. Mr. Price, next one, please.
Councillor Whitehead, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Put a bar on, Mark. It won't hurt you. Anyway, evening, Mike. Basically, the leader has kind of covered where I was going to come from. It seems a while ago now that I was genuinely inundated with old friends from Malpas and staff at St. David's there. You know, they got a bit scared, particularly the one night with oxygen cylinders and whatnot on site to help the poor patients breathe and whatnot. There's a lot of them were taking their last breath while people were drinking heavy lager and lighting fires outside. It did go on for quite a while. Thankfully, as you look out through your windows, the weather's changing, so that'll kind of dampen enthusiasm to light fires, but I've got a feeling I got a friend that lives right by there in Boyle Close, and he keeps an eye on it. He's a fantastic Malpas resident, and he often reports to me Etty Winthrop style. And the problem is they will still congregate around there drinking beer, and they are ever creeping closer to St. David's. There is, I think, sometimes escape-wise, it's exacerbated by the removal of a gate that we had, which separates Malpas and Millith. It was on the canal there at Lock Cottage, and CSO Metcalf Davis done a lot of great work around this, and it was a very expensive gate. I think somebody raised an issue about a wheelchair, and the whole frame was taken out of there. Well, since that has happened, my lovely little group of Archer ladies down the bottom to keep an eye on it are reporting that the activity, particularly bike-wise, because now they can get through there, seems to have increased there. So yeah, I know there's going to be, Stefan has already spoken with me, Paul Turner, two great officers, and they've already said about the education with the fire service and whatnot, which is a great thing. But it's not always kids. There are young adults there as well. I mean, it's quite easy to say that it is kids. I know two girls will stop doing it and said they were bored. So that's why they were lighting fires. But it's just not them kids. It is young adults who have taken to drinking around that hospice. And I have to say, it really concerns me to the point that one night I nearly walked over there, and my wife talked me out of it. But I would, and I think on behalf of my lovely Malpas friends over there, I'd be grateful if that the patrols could be just upped a little bit around that area, just for a presence, a visual presence, so people may well say, look, it's not worth it. They'll probably go somewhere else, but it's better than St. David's.
No, I hear you loud and clear, Councillor Whitehead. Thanks for raising it. And I spoke to Councillor Jordan last week about similar issues in your own ward, and the leader hit the nail on the head at the start in that this is everybody's problem. So we do need to get the landlords on board with this, particularly if they're adults on these bikes and lighting fires. So I can reassure you that there's a partnership, governance, a weekly meeting, and I will reinforce that with my teams, that I expect to see other services stepping up to the mark too.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
Yeah, Councillor Harvey, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Harvey next now, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mike, I just want to thank you for your kind words earlier. In relation, it's been pretty full on, as Ray and John can tell you. But I have to give a thank you, and if you could pass this on, please, to Martin Corley, because he is always on the end of a phone. He'll do as much as he can do for us, but again, he's got limited tools in his kit. I have to say, you've got two CSOs by the name of Robin Hayes and Joanne Spiteri. Both those ladies are pounding these streets day in, day out. They come right up to the top, all the way back down again. They're constantly looking at other ideas of how they can move the antisocial behaviour away or try and address it, such as we have what's now called Drug Alley. They're trying to get something in place so that can be closed off as well. So I take my hat off to them. With the 101, I'm sorry, Mike, but Saturday I was half an hour trying to get through and on hold. So it didn't help. I eventually I got through, gave them the information, but then it escalated, so I had to go 999. I can't fault Chief Inspector Sarah Greening. She was on leave, but was still on the end of a phone, because she could see exactly how it was escalating with the riot van, the police car, and everything else that's been going on. As for Liswerry Pond, Ben and Leanne are doing everything in their power. They're trying their hardest, and they're very grateful for the support that Martin has given them with his teams. And the motorbikes and pedal bikes that are being stolen are being set on fire on Barbarolli Green very regularly. We have a good idea of who it is, and we will be feeding it all back into Martin Corley. Cheers, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Mr. Price.
Councillor Jevons, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jevons, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Superintendent Richards. Two very quick things for me, because I know there's people to speak after. I just hope you could pass on my thanks to Martin Corley for the monthly inspector update meetings that we have via Teams. I find them very informative. But I'd like just to pay some attention to Confane shops with the ongoing antisocial behaviour. We've installed some new litter bins there to help with the litter, as people complaining with that. But if you could certainly put some patrols in there, Superintendent, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. If I can just come in on there. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'll take the feedback around the 2 CSOs. Thank you for your support, as always, during August when we had a significant busy period. Councillor Jevons, I will certainly pass on your thanks to Martin Corley. The antisocial behaviour at Pontbine shops is something he did raise with me in his briefing, and I forgot to mention it, so I know that he's aware of it. I'll make sure I speak to him this week about what the plan is and give him all the resources that he needs to do that. But thank you for both for your feedback.
Thank you. Mr. Price?
Yeah, the 30 minutes is up now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay, as long as members have heard, 30 minutes is up. If you have any other questions you wish to address to Superintendent Richards, I'm sure you can email them and to get a response from it. Would that be okay, Superintendent Richards?
Absolutely fine. I think most of you will have my email address, and I'm more than happy to facilitate any other meeting if we haven't had time to cover pressing issues tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you for participating, Superintendent Richards, and we all look forward to getting back into the chamber at some time.
I look forward to it too. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So now we have item 5, which is a notice of motion, the Edinburgh Declaration of Biodiversity. I understand that the leader is introducing this item and formally to move the motion. Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And if it's acceptable to you, Mr. Mayor, I'll read the motion and reserve my right to come back at the end as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, colleagues, this evening we have before us a really important motion that's not just important for us here today and here and now, but will be really important for future generations of Newportonians moving forward. The motion is as follows. We, Newport City Council, call upon parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity to take strong and bold actions to bring about transformative change, as outlined in the IPBES Global Assessment Report, in order to halt biodiversity loss. We recognise the vital role of subnational governments, cities and local authorities in delivering the 2050 vision of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and the 2030 mission as set out in the Zero Draft document, and to explicitly place that recognition throughout the framework text, including the monitoring framework for the goals and targets. Support the adoption at COP15 of a new dedicated decision for greater inclusion of subnational governments, cities and local authorities within the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that builds upon and renews the Plan of Action on Subnational Governments, Cities and Other Local Authorities for Biodiversity as endorsed under Decision X22, and that significantly raises ambition for subnational, city and local implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework throughout the next decade. Establish a multi-stakeholder platform that ensures representation of subnational governments, cities and local authorities to support the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. We, Newport City Council, stand ready to meet the challenge of delivering alongside parties the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and play a stronger role in the implementation of the framework through a renewed and significantly stepped up plan of action for subnational governments, cities and local authorities for the coming decade. And that this council resolves to support the Edinburgh Declaration on Biodiversity and authorises the leader to sign the declaration on behalf of the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Now, the Leader has moved the motion. I understand Councillor Hughes will be seconding it. Okay, Councillor Hughes, do you second the motion?
I second the motion, Mr. Mayor. Can I reserve the right as well to speak at the end?
Of course you can, thank you. Right, so now will you speak to the motion now? I think we've done that now or later in the debate. So does any member wish to propose an amendment? So there are no amendments. So are there any comments on the motion? Each speech should be no longer than 3 minutes, members are reminded. And the leader will get a right of reply, and Councillor Hughes as well, I think. So are there any members who wish to speak to the motion, about the motion?
So Councillor Lacey is indicated in the chat box, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the city's biodiversity champion, it would be remiss of me not to speak in support of this motion today. Newport is rich in both marine and terrestrial ecosystems, and as elected members of the city, it's our duty to do all we can to protect them. Whilst the work carried out to make Newport bee friendly has been vast and successful, it is not enough on its own. We need to work collaboratively with others to protect and enhance biodiversity, sharing best practice across these regions and taking forward bold and innovative action which will result in mutually benefit outcomes for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Are there any other members that wish to speak? Mr. Price?
Yeah, Councillor Truman, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Councillor Truman, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst everything we are discussing tonight is very important, but this has got to be up there with everything, because if we don't do something about the environment, we're heading for Armageddon, and we're all being told about it. All countries are having their meeting about it now, and there's all these debates going on now, and something has got to be done. We can't leave this earth in a worse place than what we found it. We got to leave it in a better place than we found it. We owe it to our families, future generations. This is one of the most important things we'll all discuss. We've got to look after the environment. You can see the polar caps melting. You can see all examples: heavy rain, forecasts, floods. We can see all of it, all happening as it is. So the warnings are there, Mr. Mayor. We've got to do something about it. Certainly support this motion and other motions that improve the environment. We've got to do something about this environment, and whatever opportunity we get, we've got to preserve it and improve it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. Are there any other comments from members on this, please?
Councillor Whitehead is next, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whitehead next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, what's not to like about it? Can I just say, I mean, it might seem a little bit piddling to people, but it isn't to me, and it isn't to my community. When we're talking about biodiversity, which is very important, as we all know, I've been in talks. We have 2 meetings this week with officers from both NCH and Newport City Council. I'm constantly reporting the massive, and I mean massive, I can't underplay it, amounts of Himalayan balsam that strangles our beautiful brook, ironically strangling the natural biodiversity there, because it takes over everything you can think of. It takes over it, so the natural fauna there is being strangled and subdued, and I just hope that the people this week that one of our guys are meeting, they do get on board with this, because it's unsightly, and in fact what it's turned into is fantastic camouflage for kitchen white goods, I will say that. But yes, I'm all for the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Well, I understand that balsam is actually, as they say, it's harmful to human health if you touch it. I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but
yeah, you can't encourage it to grow. It's in the 1975 Country and Wildlife Act.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm sure efforts will be made with that. Mr. Price, are there any other members who want to speak?
Councillor Hwrc.
I think he just indicated he didn't wish to speak, or was that a mistake, Councillor Hwrc?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I don't wish to speak.
Fine, thank you very much. Any others, Mr. Price?
Councillor Matthew Evans.
Councillor Matthew Evans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies about my screen. I'm struggling a bit here, but the Conservative Group will support this motion, as we have supported previous council initiatives, like the bee-friendly one, which has already been raised. We should all be singing from the same hymn sheet in taking action to tackle climate change and increasing biodiversity. It is a global challenge which needs Newport to buy in locally, as we must all play our part like the rest of the world. So, Mr. Mayor, the Conservative Group will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anybody else now wishes to say anything? No. Thank you. So now we will vote on the motion.
Well, firstly, I think Councillor Hughes is reserved the right to speak, followed by the leader.
Sorry, you are right, Mr. Price. I'm afraid I'm getting ahead of myself there. So, Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, this motion shares our deep concern about the significant implications the loss of biodiversity and climate change has on our livelihoods and communities. It impacts on every aspect of our lives. Already we can see the impact almost daily on news headlines. The world response thus far has been insufficient. We must not be looking back at missed opportunities following Glasgow. By passing this motion, we acknowledge we must build on the good work already being done in our region by government, councils and our communities. In Newport, we are determined and ambitious to address these difficult challenges and not pass on these problems to our children. Newport's ambitions must be green, not because it's en vogue, but because we have no choice. If our children are to avoid having their futures dominated and blighted by the negative impact of climate change. We live in a fragile balance with nature. We depend on nature for our health, happiness and prosperity. Protecting our natural environments means preserving it for the future generations. We must maintain a healthy ecosystem simply because we cannot be healthy in an unhealthy environment. On our doorstep, we have the Gwent Levels, where life is coming back to favourable standards. 27 kilometres of open field ditches have been restored, and my colleagues mentioned wildlife is returning all over the region. We can positively influence our future, where our past has led us to the brink of catastrophe. We must, as a council, I hope others will make a difference. We must be that difference. Please support this motion in your capacity as community leaders and let it invigorate your passions to put the environment first, if you are not already doing so. And as a united council, let us show that we do care and that we are serious about transforming our natural environments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Leader, I think you wish to sum up now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hughes, for supporting this motion. I'd like to really thank all the colleagues who've spoken on this particular motion this evening, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to share with colleagues is some examples really of the ongoing work that we're doing as a partnership. So this is not just about Newport City Council, but this is also about our partners across the city, Public Service Board partners, from our Lysets Community Garden to the Woodland Routes to Wellbeing in Dufferin, the Green and Safe Spaces Network, Green Callian, Wild About Rogerstone, Maindy Unlimited, Pride in Bettis, Barracks Wood Green Space. All across the city, we've got groups of people in communities working hard to ensure that we try and maintain the biodiversity of our environment for the future of Newport. But we need to work harder and we need to work together, Mr. Mayor. It's so critically important that we continue to do this, and that is why this motion that we put before you today is so essential to this. The Welsh Government were the first Parliament in the world to declare a nature emergency. We have to do everything that we can to address the challenges that arise from this. And I'd like to share with you, colleagues, a letter that I've received from the Bumblebee Conservation Trust. The letter is in relation to our management of grassland habitat here in Newport. The letter states, I'm writing to commend Newport City Council for its work to increase the extent of habitats across the county, in particular the management of grassland habitat. Over the past 100 years, the UK has lost 97% of its grassland habitats. And I know, Mr. Mayor, certainly with your background in farming and from the rural community, you will have had first-hand experience of that. In Newport, we've worked hard to try and protect the shrill carder bee, the most threatened bumblebee species in the UK, and which is particularly aligned to the habitats we have here. And we've been really successful in our campaigns to support that. But it's only through initiatives such as No Mow May and rewilding that we've been able to do this. We must continue to do this, and we must continue to do this for the long term. Now, all of these actions across the city, these operational actions across our communities, the actions that we can make as individuals just by planting and leaving spaces in our garden for grass to grow naturally. There are so many actions we can take individually, collectively, but we need to take strategic action as well. And we need to make that strategic commitment which will go far into the future and ensure that we protect the biodiversity of our environments for generations to come. So, colleagues, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, so I now propose that we vote on this motion. Can we have the chat box, the polling box up in front of us, please? Thank you. Okay, we've got 100% on that. Thank you. Okay, so now thank you, that amendment is carried. So now we move on to item 6, which is the Scrutiny Annual Report. I understand Councillor Lacey, on behalf of the committee, is presenting this report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the 2019-2020 Scrutiny Annual Report to Council. Scrutiny is a function of councils in England and Wales and was introduced by the Local Government Act in 2000, creating separate cabinet and scrutiny functions in local authorities. The role of scrutiny was strengthened with the passing of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011. This act requires the committee to report annually to the council on the work that is carried out in the past 12 months and its future work programmes. Since the introduction of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, Scrutiny also has a statutory role to scrutinise the work of the public service boards. The underlying principle of scrutiny arrangements is to ensure the decision-making process is open, accountable and transparent. The scrutiny function at Newport City Council is performed by 4 scrutiny committees. These committees are made up of elected members who are not part of the council's cabinet, along with co-opted representatives. These are Performance Scrutiny Committee for Place and Corporate, Performance Scrutiny Committee for People, Performance Scrutiny Committee for Partnerships, and Overview Scrutiny and Management. Overview and Management Scrutiny. The purpose of this report is to apprise the Council and other interested parties of the role of the scrutiny committees and their work during the 2019-2020 municipal year. The annual report covers the period from May 2019 to April 2020. The report highlights the important work carried out by scrutiny during this period, despite the disruptions caused by COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. The reporting period was challenging, with fewer meetings held in the first 6 months than usual due to resources being focused on the Council's response to COVID-19. Despite the unprecedented event, the Performance Scrutiny Committees for Place and Corporate and People have scrutinised performance, including how the Council have adapted and responded to the challenges faced by services and communities during the pandemic. Both committees have also received reports on the Cabinet's responses to the recommendation the committees previously made to the draft budget proposals as part of Scrutiny's remit of measuring and assessing the authority's impact and value. Other reports considered include reports on active travel, the Youth Justice Service and enforcement of COVID business restrictions. The Performance Scrutiny Committee for Partnerships considered the Wellbeing Plan annual report presented by the Public Services Board and submitted their comments to be shared with the Public Services Board. Similarly, the committee also scrutinised the performance against the Wellbeing Plan 2020-21 and submitted their comments back to the Public Services Board for consideration. Health Board and Education Service partners presented a proposal for the transformation of mental health services and the business plan for 21-22 respectively to the committee for consideration and comment. Actions planned for the reporting period were impacted by the pandemic. However, I am pleased to report that training for scrutiny members on the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act was carried out to understanding and consideration of the Act when undertaking scrutiny activity. I look forward to chairing the Overview Scrutiny Committee for the remainder of the municipal year, working alongside committee members in ensuring we provide an objective and productive challenging to the decisions of the local authority. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my scrutiny colleagues and cabinet members, officers of the local authority and partners for their continued support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lacey. Now you've presented and moved the acceptance of the report. Is there a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So are there any comments on the report, please? So I can't see the chat box, Mr. Price. Are there any? Is there any?
Nobody is indicated, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. So will you now please cast your vote by clicking on the appropriate box in the chat function, and you get a short time to cast your vote. Okay, thank you. Right, so therefore the scrutiny report, annual report, is duly approved. Thank you. So now we move on to questions to the Leader of the Council. So now we move to open questions to the Leader of the Council, and questions will be asked in the ballot list order sent out earlier today, which I'm sure members have seen. So, but before we start, does the Leader have any announcements to make? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have some announcements, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
So, colleagues, since we last met, there have been a number of developments that I'd like to share with you. I was delighted to welcome the Minister for the Economy to Newport recently, and really happy to go along with him to introduce him to some of our new emerging businesses and our new schemes that are being developed across the city. So I was delighted to go to the former Queen's Hotel, Kew Newport, and introduce the Minister to the really innovative business that is going on there at the moment. Really pleased to be able to take the Minister along to meet Bright Branch Media. And I think this is particularly important for us because both of these businesses really reflect new emerging business areas and not traditional retail businesses. So it's good to see the mix of business that we're bringing into the city centre. Also delighted, colleagues, to have the opportunity to show the Minister for the Economy around the Market Arcade development and the redevelopment of Newport Market, which, as you're all aware, is the largest one of its kind. Today, I was pleased to go to Tretega House down to meet the business owners at Zero Waste to hear about the fantastic work that they're doing in terms of really pushing forward now this ethical approach to business. And whilst I was there, I was really happy to be able to launch the next round of our business grants because we are committed very much to support for business. Over the summer, we were also delighted to see the expansion of the FlexiBus scheme across the city, and this was following on from the success of the first Flexi pilot in Wales, which launched in Rogerstone and St Julian's. And this is a partnership between the Council, Transport for Wales and Newport Bus, and it's meant a fleet of 9 brand new buses are now serving the whole of Newport. Now, the Flexi buses are improving access to public transport and enable residents to make a much wider range of journeys from early morning until late in the evening. And this is another step forward in our commitments to being a greener city. And if you haven't taken the opportunity to try out this service, speaking from actual experience, I can highly recommend it. Reflecting, colleagues, on what has been a very challenging year for us, but a year where we've been able to maintain essential service delivery, I'm now really pleased to share with you all that face-to-face services have now resumed through our contact centre. So our staff currently are working from a temporary home at the riverfront, and there are appointments available for residents who have queries relating to housing benefit, council tax, and other areas of service delivery. However, what I would emphasise, Mr Mayor, that in line with Welsh Government guidance, council staff will continue to work from home wherever possible, and we urge the use of our online and telephone services for the majority of queries. Our long-term plan, as colleagues will be aware, is for these services to move to the Central Library and Museum, right in the heart of our city centre. At our last council meeting, Mr Mayor, as you will recall, we were proud to award the Freedom of the City to the Royal British Legion in recognition of the role that it's played for the armed forces community for the past 100 years. On Thursday, the 28th of October, we will formally mark this with a freedom parade through the city. I'd like as many people as possible to get involved and help us show our appreciation of this amazing organisation. So my appeal to colleagues and members of the public who are watching the meeting, please pop the date in your diaries and look out for further details closer to the time. And Mr Mayor, I was delighted to join you for at HMS 7 for the recommissioning ceremony. What a fantastic experience that was, and both you and I share great pride, Mr Mayor, in our relationship with our affiliated ship. Having recently re-affiliated to the city, I'm really pleased to say that we are expecting the HMS 7 to return to us later this year. Now, if colleagues are not aware, that you may recall in 2017, the ship last visited Newport and berthed at Alexandra Docks as it exercised its freedom of the city prior to its planned decommission. We were delighted, Mr Mayor, weren't we, to go along and attend the recommissioning ceremony. And not only has the Royal Navy recommissioned the ship, she's also had a new coat of paint as well, and very dashing it looks, I must say. So HMS 7 will be returning to Newport in November, and representatives, I'm pleased to say, will be joining us for the Remembrance Parade and service. We look forward to welcoming the ship, her captain and the crew back to her adopted city. I'd also like to remind colleagues, Mr Mayor, if I may, that the planning application for the proposed city centre leisure centre is now open for consultation, and this can be viewed on our online planning portal. I'm raising this here in full council because we had an excellent and really positive response to the original consultation, and the comments of our residents and partners are really important to us in this process. So I would encourage people to take a look at that. It is expected to go before a full planning committee later this year when a decision will be made. If given the go-ahead, it will be built to the highest possible environmental and sustainable standards and will be a purpose-built centre with modern facilities located right here in the city centre on a key riverfront site. So that concludes my announcements for this council, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Now that you've finished, we're now moving on to the allocation list. Councillor Matthew Evans, first of all, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Leader of the Council, why did you announce Newport's bid for the City of Culture with a press release, without taking a formal decision via Cabinet, without consulting with residents, or indeed the Leader of the Opposition or other political parties?
Thank you, Leader.
I need to be absolutely clear about this in terms of the expression of interest in the competition for the City of Culture. At this stage, it is only an expression of interest, and I understand that 19 other places from across the UK have already expressed that interest. There's no requirement for a formal decision in order to express an interest in a competition. However, we were delighted with the feedback from the creative community here in Newport, from elected politicians across the region, and from our partner local authorities who also share our expression of interest in the City of Culture expression of interest. We were delighted with their support. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Council for not actually answering the question at all, which was, why didn't you consult with residents, with the Leader of the Opposition or other political parties in the city? We always consulted with you when you were in opposition. The fact that you didn't want to be involved was your decision. I think time and time again, you call Newport the city of democracy, and time again, you act like a one-party state. We will put our weight behind this expression of interest, but it's a real shame that yet again, you have ridden roughshod over the democratic processes. Don't you agree?
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that Councillor Evans and any other interested parties who'd like to gauge the level of consultation and interest in the support for the expression of interest actually look at some of the supporting letters that we've made available on our website, which don't just reflect the support from individuals, other local authorities, but also groups that represent a range of citizens across Newport. Thank you.
Sorry, as a point of information, Mr. Mayor, I have read expressions of interest from other organisations and groups and individuals, but the question was, why didn't you consult with the Leader of the Opposition or any other political parties before you submitted the expression of interest?
Thank you, Leader.
We had the one supplemental question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Price. So Councillor Kevin Whitehead now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Leader, I think we're all aware by now of the horrible incidents that seem to be a trend, really, a cruel trend around the SDR bridge. I do recall that the council ordered some sort of safety review around it. We all took part in a conversation, and correct me if I am wrong, that did you say that you'd engaged somebody called Capita to run this review? And if so, have you got any updates on us for that? Because people have asked me what's happening with the SDR, the review. Wales Online in the week, for instance, tapped me on the shoulder. Is there any updates on the whole review, safety review around the SDR, and can you confirm Capita are carrying that out?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Whitehead, I can confirm that we did commission Capita to undertake a review. I don't have an update to hand, but I'll ensure that you get a written response.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Leader.
You okay, Councillor? Right. So Councillor Carmel Townsend now, please. Is Councillor Townsend present? Okay, we'll now move then on to, if Councillor Townsend isn't present, we'll move on to Councillor Phil Hwrc. Could somebody please check that Councillor Townsend isn't having difficulty in accessing our system?
Councillor Townsend is present.
Okay, can we move back to Councillor Hwrc, can we move back to Councillor Carmel Townsend now, please? No, we don't seem to be having much success with that. So what I suggest we do, Councillor Hwrc, if you want to ask your question now, please, and then we move back to Councillor Townsend, if she can access the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see, I'm having some problem with my IT as well, but perhaps Councillor Townsend's having the same problems. But if I can ask a question of the Leader, please. Please can the Leader tell us how much the rise in national insurance will cost the local authority taxpayers in employment contributions?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. I think the question refers to the recent UK government announcement of an increase in national insurance contributions to fund health and social care. I think that's. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor. There's a message from Councillor Townsend in the chat box. I'm not sure if you can see it.
I did see that. Yes, if somebody can do something about that, great. Otherwise, we'll obviously have to continue as we are. Thank you, Leader.
Okay. Yes, we had a very interesting discussion about this at the Welsh Local Government Association meeting of leaders on Friday last week, and I think that was very helpful. It's very interesting. So the change actually means that from April 2022, everyone in the UK who currently pays national insurance will have to pay an extra 1.25% contribution. Under the current system, people over retirement age who are still working don't pay national insurance, but from April 2022, there'll be an increase of 1.25% on employee and employer national insurance contributions. So in effect, a 2.5% increase in the tax rate on employment earnings. And this will be extended, Mr. Mayor, to those who are in work and are over pension age. This is the first time that those people over pensionable age will be required to pay national insurance. Now, the Institute for Fiscal Studies have commented on this, and there was some discussion on this last Friday as well. And as I recall, the IFS actually says the combination of these factors actually make this really unnecessarily complicated, and they've come out and said that a simple increase in income tax would have been preferable. Now, the complicating factor here, and I think it's important in terms of this response, is that from April 2023, this contribution will no longer be something that is national insurance based, but it will have a new name. It'll be part of a separate tax called the Health and Social Care Levy. And again, anyone working who's over retirement age will have to pay the extra tax. What it actually means for us, and certainly what it means for us as an employer and for our citizens in Newport, is that because this is national insurance based, it means that the significant majority of the tax increase will be met by those of working age. Now, there is a significant impact in relation to this, which relates to the question as well. And that is that it creates a £47 million annual funding pressure for local authorities in Wales because of the increase in employer contributions. So £47 million funding pressure for local government, unless of course there's some sort of funding adjustment introduced to account for this. Now, whilst of course everybody would support increased investment in the NHS and in social care, the way in which the funding is currently being raised is neither fair nor progressive, falling as it does on the lowest paid rather than those who are most able to pay. In response to the question, however, this will place a significant cost on the Newport taxpayer. Our initial estimate of the cost to Newport Council taxpayers would be around £825,000 a year, or to put it another way, Mr. Mayor, the equivalent to a council tax rise of 1.5% just to make up the shortfall. That is what the cost of the rise in the national insurance contributions for employers will mean for the Newport City Council and for taxpayers across the city.
A supplementary, if I might, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, of course.
Could you try and break that down to individual households and families in Newport in cost terms, please, Leader?
Thank you for the supplementary question there. I think it's quite challenging at the moment. So we have our initial estimates. And also, I think it's really important that when we discuss these particular issues, and I'm sure colleagues would wish to do this, in joining me in paying tribute actually to the extraordinary work and dedication of those delivering social care, including those unpaid carers. Here in Wales, we've seen the Welsh Government make a new commitment of £40 million of immediate additional funding to support local authorities' delivery of social care. And we welcome that, of course we do. We also welcome the Welsh Government's commitment to paying the real living wage to all social care workers during this Senedd term. However, the aforementioned UK government decision on social care and the announcement that they've made will introduce an unfair increase in national insurance contributions, which will disproportionately impact the poorest in society. It provides no immediate new funding to the social care sector, and this is a sector that's been decimated over a decade of austerity. And it proposes no plans to reform social care. I think it's quite interesting to consider that and really contrast that with the Welsh Government's approach. It is indeed a cause for concern. Now, as I've already mentioned, our initial estimates indicate to us that the increase in national insurance contributions will impact disproportionately on families. In fact, this increase, the biggest tax increase for families in 50 years, is going to come shortly after a cut to universal credit, which will impact on around 16,000 households in Newport, leaving them £1,000 a year worse off. On top of this, our residents face the prospect of rising prices, food shortages, significant rises in gas and electricity costs as well. So it's really difficult to quantify the final figure in terms of the impact, because there are multiple issues adding up here. But we do know, as I've mentioned, that this increase, which is the biggest tax increase for 50 years, will disproportionately affect families. Now, it's no wonder that the TUC, the CBI, the IFS, the Local Government Association and others are really concerned by this, and concerned by the potential impact of it, because what the indications already show us, Mr. Mayor, is that this is a tax on lower paid jobs and a tax on lower paid workers. And it doesn't guarantee the necessary funding for either social care or for the NHS. I do wonder, Mr. Mayor, if those who voted for Brexit will wonder why it's needed after all. I mean, when we were considering this, there was a commitment, wasn't there, to £350 million a week, or 18.2 billion a year, on its way to the NHS as part of the Prime Minister's Brexit dividend, which, if it were true, of course, would deliver more annually than the proposed rise in national insurance.
Thank you, Vida. The 15 minutes is now up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So now we will move on to question 8. Item 8, sorry, questions to Cabinet members. So the first question, Councillor Watkins, your question to the Cabinet member, please. Members are reminded that the question must be read out exactly as submitted. Time limit for asking the questions is 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the Cabinet member explain the rationale behind the policy covering applications for a disabled parking bay for those people suffering disability and needing the support of this facility? Does the Cabinet member consider it fair and meeting the needs of those needing to apply? And what would be his views in terms of the policy being discriminatory? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Cabinet member to respond, please. Cabinet member.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find it strange that the member has asked for the policy when I've sent the policy out twice to all members, but I will go through it. The policy for disabled parking bays was initiated when we took over from the Conservative and Liberal administration. I set up a meeting with officers so we could find a place to find some funding for this provision. A sum of 15,000 to 20,000 was used from the Safety at Home grant to maximise the number of bays, provided we develop new procedures. This was done in conjunction with a Cabinet member for City Services. A request starts with the initial contact progressing to an assessment of need by an OT, surveying the highway, traffic orders, and then out for consultation. It is a process, not just a case of painting lines on the road outside a home. That's the easy part. To maximise the number of bays provided within the funding available, a batch process was implemented. To go through this process for each individual bay would be so costly and result in fewer bays being provided each year. A submission of requests of bays starts between November and February, enabling processing costs to be minimised whilst providing prudent use of finances. For members' awareness, this has been to scrutiny twice and agreed by all members. If Councillor Watkins is so passionate about this, she should ask why her own group, when they were in control, didn't address this issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cochrane. Councillor Watkins, you have a supplementary question?
I do indeed. Could the Cabinet member please state, does he feel that this policy supports the local authority rather than supporting a person with disability and in serious need of the assistance of a disabled parking bay?
I find that quite insulting, you even mentioning that for me. I've been passionate about helping disabled people throughout the years, and as far as I'm concerned, we brought in a policy for disabled parking bays when your administration didn't. Now we can only do what we can. I managed to find that funding through the Safety at Home grant. It's all done by an assessment on need based. So as far as we're concerned, we're there, we're doing all we can for the money we've got available. It's not a statutory responsibility, disabled parking bays, and most authorities don't do it. And another point I think I want to mention, it's very difficult. We can't put disabled parking bays everywhere in the town. If you take terrace houses, when a disabled parking bay is agreed, it takes a third of the house next door and a third of the house on the other side. So it's not always accepted by the people in the area, but obviously disability does come first. And for another point is, if you've got a blue badge, you can double park. So if someone has got a disability, someone with a blue badge who is helping that individual can double park outside that house. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could I just ask a question, please? You mentioned OT in your presentation, Councillor Cochrane. What does that stand for, please?
Occupational therapist and medically qualified trained person.
Thank you very much. So now we move on to question 2, I think, which is to the Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member of City Services. Councillor Mogford, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions. Is there an issue in which order they go?
No.
Okay, as long as the Cabinet Member's happy, I'll start off with my question on flooding. I just want to mention that Councillor Routley has left the meeting because we actually have
Mr. Mayor, they need to be taken in the order listed in the agenda.
Oh, is that okay then? Oh, so I'm very sorry about that, Mr. Price. Councillor Mogford, would you mind returning to the original way it's listed, please?
Can you remind me which is the original one? It would be fly tipping?
Fly tipping, yes.
That's fine. I just want to see if I had a latitude on that. Okay, my question is, on the 16th of April 2001, the South Wales Argus reported on the litter situation in Newport, link provided. Councillor Jevons was quoted in that article saying litter and fly tipping is created by irresponsible individuals, and the end result is a significant negative impact on our communities and a burden on council resources. End of quote. From a low base of prosecutions in 2019 and 2020, namely 7 and 61 respectively, it was claimed that in 2021 prosecutions have now risen by over 700%. Could the Cabinet Member update the Council on the latest situation in the ongoing battle against littering, including in his answer, what are the current number of successful prosecutions so far for 2021? Has the burden on council resources increased as a result? And what are the current litter hotspots in the City of Newport, and has that changed since April 21? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cabinet Member?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tackling litter and fly tipping remains a priority for the Council, and even with all the issues and restrictions over the last 18 months, we have seen an increase in action taken. The latest figures we have for this year are 25 fixed penalty notices issued. Regarding prosecutions, there's a huge backlog caused at courts by the pandemic, but in the past 2 months, we have had 6 cases heard at court. There are also another 26 cases with dates given for hearing at the court in the next 3 months. We also have 15 investigations ongoing. Cabinet took the decision earlier this year to increase the fly tipping team and increase the number of slots available at the HWRC. A major COVID operation at the LG Access Road, a hotspot for many years, has resulted in a number of prosecutions and some further court cases pending. A number of other COVID operations are ongoing across the city, but for obvious reasons, I will not be providing the locations. In terms of litter, this administration is on track to double the number of litter pins across the city by the end of the year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Councillor Mogford, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Yes, and I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for a very concise and informative answer. My supplementary question touches on the infamous road to nowhere. It's the case that the situation down there is still, after all this time, atrocious. We have, I don't know, half a mile of litter that still exists. I understand this is council-owned land or adopted highway. Could the Cabinet Member give an indication as to how this will be removed, how and when it will be removed?
Could I, again, Cabinet Member, before you answer, Councillor Mogford, could, for the benefit of possibly some of our members and maybe people in the wider people, council area may be watching this, you referred to the road to nowhere. Could you explain where that is, please?
It's on the west side of Newport. I think it's a road that is not in use.
Could I come in with that just to clarify?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Cabinet Member, perhaps you could
set it. It's the old LG Access Road, and I just will refer back to the point that we still have a number of COVID operations ongoing. So I really don't want to give any information as to what we're going to do with that because of the operations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we move on to Councillor Mogford again. Move on to Councillor Mogford again. Once again to the Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member of City Services, please.
Okay. Right. As I alluded, I just want to explain that Councillor Routley, my colleague from Langstone, has left the meeting to attend a flooding issue in Langstone. So this question is particularly pertinent. The South Wales Argus reported on the 3rd of September 2020 an article on flooding titled "Why Newport Flood Risk Plan Won't Be Published." The link is provided. In that article, it was claimed that more than half of Newport has been identified as being at risk of flooding in a new council plan. However, the actual plan will not be disclosed to the public, even though flooding is currently considered to be the greatest risk of an emergency occurring in the NCC area. Also, 4 new flood risk areas have been identified: Maindee, Crinder, Dufferin and Liswerry. In addition, most council wards will be affected by the plan due to the vast coverage of the flood risk. That's my preamble. The question is, could the Cabinet Member give an update as to what measures have and will be taken in line with said plan since its sign-off, and how this ties into the Section 19 report that has also been mentioned several times in full council? Could the Cabinet Member at this point also update as to how the plan will have a positive impact on the Langstone ward, which amongst many other wards was severely affected by flooding at the end of 2020? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council has a statutory duty to produce a plan, making sure it has the appropriate arrangements in place to respond to flood incidents in the city. It is a UK government requirement that this plan is classified as officially sensitive due to commercial and security reasons, as the plan contains information such as reservoir mapping. However, all the information that is essential for public to know is well documented and in the public domain that includes the flooding risks in the city as well as responsibilities of all agencies concerned. The 4 new flood risk areas identified within the plan were informed by Natural Resources Wales as part of their Communities at Risk Register. The data indicating the extent of the flood risk from the NRW has only been published today. Investigations of this publication will commence to evaluate the severity of the flood risk, and this will inform our planning and flood risk strategies going forward. And as previously mentioned, the Section 19 report covers the conclusion of investigation, which is still ongoing, although move in progress, to the relevant authorities and will be published once complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Councillor Mogford, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, okay, I did ask about the impact on Langstone Ward. My supplementary question, therefore, is at recent meetings, or not so recent meetings, it was discussed about having sandbags strategically located in a number of wards. I think Liswerry and Langstone are the two that I'm aware of. Could the Cabinet, this may be an operational question, but still, could the Cabinet member update us on where we're going with these sandbags and storage?
Yes, I will, Mr. Mayor. Work is ongoing with that. We do have some suitable locations and the OK from certain residents to place those sandbags, but work is ongoing, and as soon as we get any more, we can start installing. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Perhaps you can keep Councillor Mogford updated on that. Thank you. So the next question, question 4, is the Cabinet Member for Licensing and Regulation. Councillor Mogford, your question to the Cabinet Member, please.
Okay, so the Cabinet Member is Councillor Truman.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Truman.
Well, I hope that Councillor Truman can answer this question with as much passion that he gave about the environment earlier on, because this question is about the environment. Pollution in the environment is an issue devolved to Wales, and the Welsh Government has been keen to encourage the use of public transport. A Welsh Labour Government member has been quoted admitting every year across Wales air pollution contributes to almost 1,400 early deaths and costs the Welsh NHS almost £1 billion. Also quoted, we know that for some, even a short-term spike in air pollution can affect their health, whilst long-term exposure also increases risks of developing conditions such as heart disease, dementia, lung cancer, diabetes, and more. Going on to say, cutting a reliance on cars was central to improving Newport's air quality, and pointed to measures in the Burns report, which set out a series of ways improving transport around the city after the M4 Relief Road was scrapped. Looking at this from a vantage point in Langstone, there's an associated spillover onto the local roads as a result. This is only exacerbating the situation of air pollution in Langstone Ward. At the same time, there appears to be no solution to stop this traffic situation happening week after week, month after month, year after year. I'm referring to the M4. Could the Cabinet Member update the Council on where are the worst areas of air pollution in Newport and what actions are currently being taken to reduce the ongoing traffic issues and the number of deaths in Newport associated with this poor air quality?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I would refer Councillor Mogford to the detailed information that I have previously provided to Council in response to questions about air quality management. However, the worst areas of air pollution in Newport are clearly the 11 air quality management areas that the Council has declared, 5 of which are located along the M4 corridor. The levels of nitrous dioxide recorded in those areas exceeded air quality objectives set by the Welsh Government. However, those air quality management areas were declared a number of years ago, and as I have previously advised Council, the emission levels in all of those areas adjacent to the M4 are gradually reducing and are all moving towards compliance. In fact, the St Julian's AQMA air quality management area is due to be revoked as it has not breached the air quality objectives for a number of years. Therefore, we are making good progress in reducing emissions and improving air quality. The Environmental Health will continue to monitor air quality and will update the Council's Air Quality Action Plan with actions to improve air quality in these air quality management areas. A key part of the action plan will be to establish local action groups to engage with local communities, because educating the public and encouraging changes in behaviour are essential if we are to reduce the effects of air pollution on public health. We are about to establish the first local action group in Clean, and that will then be rolled out across the other air quality management areas in Newport. As I have said previously, this is not something that the Council can address on its own. The Council has also published a sustainable travel strategy and is developing active travel routes. I have outlined to Council previously some of the sustainable travel initiatives being developed, including the use of electric vehicles, air quality climate change, and carbon reduction are all part of the same public health agenda. With regard to traffic issues, the introduction of the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit on stretches of the M4 relief road, on stretches of the M4 by Welsh Government has undoubtedly had a positive effect in terms of air quality emissions. But traffic management and congestion on the M4 are matters for the Welsh Government, and also improvements in public transport as a result of the Burns report will be developed at the regional level as part of the strategic transport policy. If Councillor Mogford has any questions about particular public transport schemes, then he will have to raise that issue with my cabinet colleague on street scene.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. Councillor Mogford, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I don't apologise for asking this question, and maybe the information is available, but I'm also looking for new information. You mentioned the local action group. Could you give just a few words on who might be members of that group and how it's put together?
Well, as we know, Colleen have done a number of air quality issues for years, and that is a group of people out there will be sitting around. There'll be councillors on there as well, and officers will be going to those meetings and listening to what people are telling them and giving them the advice and what can be done, etc. But the public got a big role to play in this, as I said earlier on, and they can put forward all the information and questions. But by meeting and involving the people who are affected by this, I think it's the best way to move forward with with the new improvement measures we've got.
I would like clarification, but now is not the time for it. Can I follow this up offline with you, Councillor Truman?
Well, I'm afraid you want me to do it tonight because I've got
no, offline. Sorry, offline.
Well, as I say, if you give me if I can give you a written response if you like, if you send me an email.
I understand your response, but I want. Okay, we'll leave it there.
I'll send you. You send me what information you want, and I'll give you a written response.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very helpful, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Mogford. I think we are now at the end of the meeting. Just to say that Councillor Carmel Townsend was unable to ask her question. Could we ensure that either she's given that answer, or that we ensure that at the next council meeting, if she wishes to ask that question or a similar question, that her IT issues are sorted out, please?
We'll send a written response to the question with the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I haven't been able to see any of that, you see, Mr. Price, because I haven't got that function at the moment. So this now concludes the meeting of the council, and the next meeting will take place on the 23rd of November. So thank you all for attending, and we'll see you in November, if not before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, see you all soon. Bye.